All right, I wanted to record something quickly. I sort of stopped working on the house the last few weeks. My daughter teaches at the local high school, and she's in charge of the Haunted High School. It's an annual Halloween thing, and she wanted me to help her build a stilt monster costume, and that's what I've been working on. And then she sprung on me, hey, can you make two of them? So these are the parts. These parts are the back legs. This is the overcoat. It's attached to a black hoodie, and then there's a really creepy mask that goes with it. And then these are the front legs that are built over stilts. The back legs are carpenter drywall stilts. They're built over that. So I just wanted to get a picture of the parts, and I'll try to get together an actual working monster when they've got a dress rehearsal today at 3. So I'm trying to get at least one of the costumes done to get it to her. All right, as usual, back to work. It is April 1st, 2023. Look at the snow we've got. This is the last of the snow ready to come off this roof. I'm going to have to get my saw and try to saw through it because I don't dare to go in and out through the door with it hanging off like that. And then the other roof is about ready to slide off, and that's going to be an avalanche. We still have tons of snow here. Hey, Jewel, what you doing? You a good girl? So I got to take care of this snow before I can go inside. And I've been doing monotonous, boring electrical work. You can see in a picnic table. It's about 3 feet of snow still and standing in the woods. All right. And like I said, what I've been doing lately is trying to finish up a lot of the wiring, running the cables and installing into the junction boxes and all the switch and outlet boxes. And I'm at the point where I'm connecting all the wires in the junction boxes first. And I am using, I may have mentioned this before, instead of wire nuts, I'm using these Ideal connectors. These things work great. They have different port holes, like this one is for 3 wires. I've got some for 2 wires, 4 wires, up to 6 wires. And these little connectors, this type is a push-in connector, and it has the clear plastic so you can see the wire going into it. And the wire is supposed to go all the way to the end. There's a little instruction thing on the back of the package that shows how far to strip the wire. It's supposed to be a 1/2 inch. I find that a little more than a 1/2 inch works a little better. That way the wire can go all the way to the end, and then it's supposed to go into this hole a ways with the insulation on it. You don't want bare wire sticking beyond. But what I do is I have a little wire cutter here that I've set so that the blade is just sticking out slightly, and then I can run it along the cable so it cuts through the outer casing without cutting into the inner insulating part of the wire. Then I pull it back and clip it off, and then I trim the edges to the right size, slightly more than a ½ inch. And what I have been doing is I've got a square set just to the right depth, and then I hold it up, put my thumb on the end of it at the right spot, and then use my wire strippers, which I bought some expensive wire strippers that didn't work as well as these cheapy little things here. Then I just clip it on, pull off the insulation, and then I use that first one and I line it up with all the others and put my thumb in the area and strip it off. And then once I get all 3 wires stripped, then I attach all the neutral wires, the hot wires, and then the ground wires all have their own separate connector. And the system works really well. I find sometimes, well, most of the time, I also file the very end of the wire, because if it's jagged edges, when you insert it into these connectors, sometimes they get caught up on the plastic. It's harder to push it in. So by smoothing the end of it, it goes in better. But you still, sometimes I have to put pliers on the end just to shove it in all the way. And it's important to get it in so that it goes all the way to the end. And then once I get them all connected, I wrap electrical wire around it. That way when you're stuffing it back in the box, nothing is going to get pulled out. Although these wires, you should always test whether you're using wire nuts or any other type of connector. But these don't pull out easily. You can remove it by twisting the wire as you're pulling it. But I find I've got a lot more of these junction boxes than probably a lot of people do when they're doing wiring. But I've got enough room. The walls are 6 inches thick. And I find it easier when you're connecting 3 or 4 lines together, rather than pigtailing it out of an outlet or switch box, which is harder to stuff everything back in the more wires you have. So the junction boxes are easier to stuff everything back in and close it up. The kitchen I've already, was the first room that I wired, and I finished up with the upstairs. I like to just record where all the wires are, so I can always go back if I have to. If I can't remember, where was that wire running? I don't want to puncture a wire with a screw or a nail. And then I've got to set up the service box. These are all the different circuits here coming in, and everything is labeled. And I've got to get all the circuit breakers. Everything is done with 12-2 wire. I don't have any 14 gauge. I just feel the 12-2 is safer. It can handle more of a load. And I divided the circuits up so they're evenly spaced. Of course, the kitchen has a lot more circuits because there's more things with power that some require their own circuit, like the dishwasher. A lot of these outlets along the countertops where the smaller appliances will be plugged into, they have separate circuits. Like these outlets here, I ran a 3-wire with the black and the red, and then I will alternate The black will run on one circuit and the red will run on another, so you don't overload a circuit with all the small appliances, toasters and microwaves and coffee makers. And I'm going to just take a run upstairs here. And all of these wires, you run them behind the walls, and once I get all the wiring done, then I've got to start the insulation and then sheetrock and vapor barrier and then sheetrock. These are some of the other junction boxes and switches and outlets. Another junction box over there. These are switch boxes with the three-way switch, so that switch and this switch, you can turn the lights on and off from either side. This bedroom. And then I'm also, when I'm done, I'm putting plates over the back of some of the outlets, switches, so I don't accidentally drill through. I just use some of these metal plates, flatten the end, and I also have some other flat plates that I'm using to do the same thing. Also, places where I have to drill through a 2x4 in a wall, if it's in the middle, you know, like here for instance, I'll put a plate on either side of it just so you can't drill through. The screws that I'm using for all the sheetrock are short enough where they won't reach the center anyway, so that shouldn't be a problem. And this is the upstairs bathroom, and this is what I was talking about where I taped up the end of the connectors before I stuffed them all in. It's a beautiful spring day today, finally. It's like in the 50s. All the snow is falling off the roofs. Now there is a junction box. I put this one in, and it has 6 connections running into it. So I use a 3-gang box rather than a regular junction box. So it gives me more room to stuff the wires in. But these are the 6 port hole connectors. And then, of course, it'll be covered. I've got 2 plates, a large plate, and then a smaller one to cover it. And this is another junction box where the wires come in from downstairs. There's a switch that goes to the outside. There'll be a little porch overhang with a light, and then there'll also be an outside outlet. So the wires come in to this junction box. They're attached. They're 2 separate lines. One goes to the light and one goes to the outlet. Now I've done this to a couple of different areas with doors with lights outside, and I'm using the outdoor 12-2 wire and then it's spliced to the indoor wire. This one, I wanted the outlet to be able to be used without having to turn the switch on from inside. All the others, I have a switch that attaches to the light, and then it goes from the light down to the outlet. So you have to have that switch turned on in order to use the outside outlet. But this one, I wanted the outlet separately. And then when I get the porch built, I'm going to drill through here, and the wires will be inserted and run out to the outside porch roof area. All right. Now I've got a lot more wiring to do. And all these light wires that are hanging down are going to be pot lights in the ceiling. There's another switch here. It's a three-way switch, so I can turn it on and off from here. All these lights, and then the other switch will be on the other end of the hallway. And then I also have wires going up to a couple of vents that vent to the outside. And then there's going to be a fan. It's a vent fan. It's kind of like, regular bathroom vent fan. And the opening above all the walls lets bathroom moisture, steam come out, and then there'll be a fan here that blows it out of the bathroom into this greater room, and then that fan can blow it outside if I need to. And of course the glass wall is going to go all around this corner. All right, my famous catchphrase, but back to work. Hey, Jewel. All right, I wanted to just show one more time how I'm wiring these junction boxes. I've only got a couple left, and I'm sealing them up as I finish it. But this junction box has 3 wires coming in. So the connectors I'm using, it's these push-in Ideal, and they have 3 portholes. Because there's 3 wires, I use the 3-hole connectors. And I always use 3 connectors for each box. If there were like 6 wires coming in, I'd have 3 connectors, but they would have 6 holes instead of 3. And you just wire together all of the same color in the connector. So all the whites would go in one, all the bare wire, and then the blacks would go in the other. And after I measure the length, usually 7-8 inches, so it gives me enough wire so I can twist it and push it into the box. I will strip off the outside casing, and I have a special little utility knife I set up, and it has a little bit of a, where am I here? It sticks out just slightly on the end, and I've got it taped up so it stays to that depth. So it pierces the outer plastic without cutting into the insulation on the wires themselves. And then I remove all that, and then I've got it's supposed to be 1/2 inch according to these connectors. You want enough room so that the exposed wire makes contact, and it should go all the way, the wire should extend all the way to the end. And so I use this as a gauge, where am I? On the end for the first cut, and then I hold my thumb on the end of the wire and then I clip it off with these simple little wire snips. They seem to work the best. I bought an expensive pair of wire clippers that weren't worth the money, so I returned them. These have a depth gauge, so the wire isn't cut completely through, and then you can just spin it around and pop it off. And then once I get them all to the same, the ends to the same size, then I file the ends, because after you cut these wires, sometimes there are sharp edges. And I found the first time I used these, because they're plastic, if there's sharp edges or burrs on the end of the wire, they tend to get caught on the plastic and they don't go in all the way to the end. So it takes a little longer to do, but I file the ends of the wires so there's no sharp edges, no burrs. And then I push on the connectors. I'll do like all one color first, and then do the next color, and then the third. And then I also use some pliers just to make sure, like I'll hold on the end of the wire and help to push it into the connector, just to make sure it seats all the way to the end. And then I'll make sure they're all in tight. I do a little tug test. These connectors hold really well. That's one of the advantages over wing nuts, or not wing nuts, but wire nuts. And then I also put electrical tape around each thing and onto the wires, just to hold it, because as you're folding it and pushing it in place, I don't want it to accidentally pull out, if so the tape just helps hold everything in place. And then I twist it all in place, push it in securely, and then put the cover on. The boxes that are closer to the edge of the wall, I'm using metal plates, just in case a nail or screw goes through, mounting something. I don't want it to go through the plastic and into the wire. The boxes that are, like there's one I just finished, it's up here, and that one sets in far enough, so I put the plastic covers over it. Okay, I've only got, I think, 3 of these junction boxes left, and then it's on to the next project. Okay. I just wanted to quickly record this. Mr. Peabody is getting a makeover today. And it's about time. What a beautiful day. You can hear the birds, wind. Okay, here is a shot of Mr. Peabody's 2023 makeover. I wanted to do a face that had real scary looking eyes. That usually scares animals away. I don't know if I should continue calling him Mr. Peabody or Mrs. Peabody. I guess he's sort of gender neutral. All right. Kind of loud with the roaring water, but today is July 11th, I think, 2023, and Vermont was just hit with a major rain event, and there's tons of flooding and road washouts. This is one of my little trickle streams normally, and I'm going down the path to my swimming area. This is the North Branch Lamoille River, and I wanted to see how high it is. I wouldn't want to be swimming in there today. Holy cow. This spot here is normally it's a little sort of cascading falls. It's running so high that there's not even a falls anymore. Look at that. That's incredible. I don't dare to get too close. I don't want to fall in. Alrighty. Alright, I want to get a quick shot of some of the millions of things that I'm trying to do in order to move in. I'm installing the cast iron cleanout doors on all the flues in the chimney. This is the upstairs flue. And what I did is I drilled with a hammer drill, marked where the hole has to be, and then there's concrete screws that go into the holes to hold the doors in place. And now I'm mortaring around everything. I had to invent another little tool in order to squeeze the mortar in behind where it needs to go. So I took an old Lexel container when it was emptied. This has caulking in it. It's a good kind of caulking that I use for everything. I cleaned it out and then pulled out the little plunger, and this little needle unscrews, which makes it easy for cleaning. And then I fill it up with the furnace cement, and I can squirt it in behind. I know there are tools like this on the market that work similar. I used to have it looked like a frosting bag that you could stuff with mortar also, but it didn't work as well. So that's what I'm doing now, that, and I'm working downstairs. I'll show what's going on down there too. These are the two downstairs clean out doors down the flues. That one goes up here where the kitchen wood stove will go, and then this one, it's the stove that will be in the library area that will heat the main part of the house. And I have also been working on the downstairs bathroom and utility room. I've put vinyl floor down in the utility room. I put up 3/4 inch plywood pieces. I had to do sheetrock. I have installed part of the intake and exhaust for the heater unit. And my nephew, the plumber, is going to help me do the final connections. The heater is going to be mounted in that area. That's what the cardboard is there for. Then I've also, this is the downstairs bathroom. I have poured some leveling cement in here before I do tile. It's going to be the same tile into the bathroom. And I had to do some fancy work where the toilet's going to go. The pipes were a little too high once the floor level was established, so I had to do some fancy work and trim the pipe a little. I didn't want to trim it too much because I wanted, the pipe cement to hold everything. But I built this little platform, has tile on it, and then the toilet will sit on top of that. And it's an older toilet. I just set it in here for now, but it's really cool vintage mauve rose color, and it has the matching sink. things that people used to throw away are now vintage classics that people are paying big money for. Okay, so that's what I am doing, and I've got to get back to it. All right, I am finishing up the flooring in, well, the utility room is done. I've got the vinyl tile, and then the downstairs bathroom, the vinyl tile. So I'm finishing up the third room that needs flooring. That's this corner room. This room I am installing this planking floor. It's a laminate. It looks like real wood, but it's not. And I originally was going to do a two-tone because I had salvaged 3 boxes of this light colored flooring, and I couldn't get the exact same thing anymore because these are older boards. So I looked around. I found a style that's very similar, but not quite the same thickness. But I figured out a way I could make it work, but it just was a lot of extra work to do it. So I finally broke down. I originally had 3 boxes of this dark, so it was going to be the darker, sort of a brown cherry finish. It kind of matches the rest of the wood coloring in the house, the light natural and the brown cherry. So I decided I'm just going to go ahead and get all the same. So I got 3 more boxes of the darker, and I'm going to do the whole thing in the darker wood. But I just wanted to quickly show how I'm doing it. The best thing to do, and if you can see these lines I drew on the floor, but I measured the center line one way and then the other way. Then I counted the thickness of the planks from the center to the edge, because the one on the very edge would have to be trimmed, and I wanted both walls to be equal. So I just cut lengthwise this piece, 3 of these, and these are going to go, I drew in pencil lines of where they start, and they've got to be about 3/8 of an inch from the actual wall, because it's going to contract and expand like any wood products. So I'm going to do this wall starting, and then click in the others till I get to the center. And the way these click into place, I will alternate sort of like bricks, so that the seams, the end seams on one row will match the following. You skip over and do the next row so they line up. That way the whole thing interlocks and you don't have like one continuous seam going across the room. It looks better and it's a stronger bond that way. So that's what I'm doing, and I've got to get back to work. The hardest part with this kind of flooring is you've got to get your floor as level as possible. So these were concrete screeded originally, and I've had to use that leveling compound, which works great. You pour it and it's self-leveling. It's very thin, runny, but it's something that works better when you're working in a crew. Hey, Jewel, good girl. Because it dries so fast. So I had to do it in smaller batches. So it just took a lot longer. And then once that is all dried, I have a latex coating on the top. So that's it. Now I've got to get back to work. All right, I have all the laminate plank flooring done in this room now. And what I'm finishing up here is around the edges, I put in spacer blocks, and then I put the painter's tape down and put in a bead around the edge of caulking. Well, it's actually like a glue caulking, so it hardens. I find that with this flooring, it's important to get your joints, these joints and these joints, as tight together as possible when you're laying it. That's what this tool does here. You just set it on the ends, and you take a hammer, and you tap and tap and tap. And after I got it all in place, I went around and all the way around and tapped it so that all the joints are good and tight. I think it's more important to secure these ends, because these blocks are going to come out now that I've got the glued part hardened in here, and then I'll fill in where these blocks were with some more glue. This type of flooring, it's not like it's real solid wood. It's kind of a masonite composite board, so it doesn't have the expansion and contraction like real wood does. And I think it's more important to keep these joints from spreading, and if you leave space around the edge like a lot of the instructions say to do, because it's a floating floor, I just find that the joints start pulling apart. So I don't think I'm going to have an issue with expansion and contracting and having the floor buckle, but I would have a problem if I left the edge open, because just walking on it causes it to drift. And real wood flooring, you tack down along the seams, and then you put the next board into the groove, then you tack the other seam so they stay in place. But this floating stuff tends to float apart. But anyway, that's progress in here. So I have these 3 rooms flooring done now, and I can work on sheetrock, and I've got to finish putting the vapor barrier and some insulation here and there. All right, time to go back to work. Alrighty, I wanted to get a shot of the progress on this flooring. Some of the rooms I have to get the finished flooring installed in order to do other things, especially with bathroom floors. I have to get the final floor exact height in order to install the toilet, and the shower is going to go in that corner, so I have to have the flooring done. But anyway, what I'm doing here, I use a lot of salvage materials in this house. This vinyl flooring is Armstrong, really high quality that I picked up, but it's a smaller piece. I wanted to use it, especially I like the green color because it'll go with the green sink and toilet motif. And I also salvaged some of these tiles. They're a thick vinyl tile, which is going to go around the perimeter of the linoleum to finish the floor around the edges. But everything has to be exact as far as thickness and positioning, and I had to glue a backing of tar paper, felt paper, to the back of the linoleum to bring it up to the same thickness as the tiles. And I ended up finishing up the plywood floor. I had to level spots in between joints where the strand board was butted up to other pieces, and then I put a coat of paint on top of that so that the glue will stick better. So what I'm doing now, I laid out the vinyl, and then I laid out perimeter of these tiles so I know where the vinyl has to be. And this side, the tiles will butt up against the cut side here along this edge and along this edge. And then I will overlap the tiles on top of the linoleum because these joints all have to fit together where they go around the linoleum. So I'm going to have to trim along the edge here and then along the bottom. So first I had to put them in place to measure where everything has to go so I know the linoleum's in the right spot. Then I'm going to move the tiles away. I'm going to tack. Alright, I was explaining something about this vinyl flooring in the upstairs bathroom, and then the battery died, so I had to recharge it, and it's now 2.5 weeks later because I've been getting firewood for the last couple of weeks. And so what I wanted to finish saying is, now that this is all glued down, I went around and rolled everything down with my roller, and I moved all these weights that are around the edges so I could roll right up to the edge. And then the next thing I got to do is these green thicker vinyl tiles are going to go all around the lighter green flooring, and they're going to finish the rest of the floor. Going to go underneath where the shower stall will be, and then the toilet will be under there. There's some weights that are holding down some